What the hell was I doing on top of a snow-covered narrow ledge high in the Canadian Rockies praying that the helicopter, which had just dropped me off, could actually take off again? I was getting my zen and preparing for the adventure of a lifetime. It turns out the easiest part of heli-skiing is skiing down the pristine powder in perfect weather. The hard part is the anticipation of waiting for over 2 years from COVID delays. Actually, it really took me 25 years of skiing with my kids from Mountain Creek to Mammoth that made it possible for this day to finally happen. Life is precarious, but I was not thinking about that while kneeling on one knee in deep snow on a glacier in the Alpine mountain range of British Columbia. I was waiting to get the all clear so I could stand up without getting my head chopped off from the whirling main rotor after the pilot dropped us off for our first run on the first day. I had my zen, even though after the helicopter barely lifted 25 feet off the ground, it started to drop and return back to the landing spot where the group and I were still kneeling in a crouched position. I wasn't even nervous when the guide was shouting over the eardrum bursting decibel level of the rotors. There is nothing to worry about. You won't be stuck here all night. It didn't even occur to me to panic when the pilot shut down the engines and simply parked on this high alpine perch, waiting for the gray light and clouds that reduce his visibility to lift. That is how my first heli-skiing trip with the CMH Heli in Revelstoke, Canada began, on our very first ride up the mountain. Still, in spite of the obvious danger, I wasn't nervous or afraid of the potential consequences that were very real out there in the high alpine wilderness. How do you relax when your primordial instincts say, time to be on high alert? Why didn't I or the other 10 souls, still strangers in my midst, panic? Most of us had never even been on a heli-skiing trip. We were living in the moment, a moment in our lives that was only just beginning, a moment with both great
Looking
expectations
good.
and none at all. With hardly a word uttered between us in those first few minutes of our adventure, we were all taking a silent vow. The promise we made in that precarious moment was that our shared experience and our
Woohoo!
utter dependence on each other would determine the outcome. Don't get me wrong, there was still plenty of time for anxiety and nervousness, despite the apparent calm and group bravado. Earlier that morning, we had to complete the CMH orientation, which included watching safety videos on the dangers of avalanches and tree wells. We drilled on finding a buried skier with a beacon and digging out the guide of a tree well. Best of all was a stern talk by the helicopter pilot right before takeoff on how not to get your head sliced off by the helicopter rotor. That long first flight up the mountain range gave me ample time to contemplate my sanity and safety. Was this really a risk worth taking? Finally, the clouds cleared, the visibility improved, and the helicopter rumbled away from the landing zone. It was time to ski. I admit that my goals when I slid into the bowl of fresh stuff for my virgin run down the mountain were about finding the perfect line and amassing meters and meters of vertical. But I soon found a higher purpose, and I suspect so did my 9 fellow skiers. We became a band of brothers. We were from distant places and birth nations, including Spain, Israel, and the UK. Despite being strangers, we were bound together by more than just the joy and passion for skiing. We were united in covering our partners' backs and ensuring their safety. We knew that alone we fail, but together we thrive. The shared experience of the success and challenges made the voyage exponentially sweeter and obstacles easier. The obstacles were never the kind of death-defying stunts you see in Warren Miller ski films. No, we never jumped out of the helicopter. I am sure we each faced our moment of doubt and concern, though. But I honestly had to have put myself in many worse predicaments on inbound ski resort terrain. Still, there was no question that the stakes are infinitely higher in the backcountry. But we were not risk takers. No, our group were all risk mitigators, led by world-class experts. The CMH operation was a well-oiled machine of logistics planning and guiding. Their design was to ski us down safely within our limits each and every time. It's so easy to take it all for granted. The skiing was fun and the terrain for the most part forgiving. But a few quick lessons reminded me that the line between overconfidence and humility is razor thin. The helicopter incident on the first run of the first day reinforced that knowledge, that every takeoff and landing on a snow-covered mountain is a complex orchestration of changing variables. My final lesson in high alpine humility occurred during the last run on my second day. It provided great excitement and entertainment for all who watched my antics. I was about 100 meters above the designated pickup spot, directing the last skiers in our group to a traverse. We were in low-angle terrain, close to a flat plateau. I took a quick left instead of following the skiers' tracks to the traverse. I thought I could float over what looked like a nice plump pillow of snow. What could go wrong? The rest of my group was already perched below me at the helicopter pickup point, yelling, "Oh shit! I think he's taken a fall into the cave. I hope he hasn't lost consciousness." I had innocently hucked a 10-foot boulder, and before I could even say, "Oh shit," landed in a flat heap of snow, perilously close to a cave under the boulder. But with all my body parts and ski parts attached, if not my ego, I picked myself up and skied with embarrassment to my audience of astonished admirers. I was lucky for sure. I had skied the final run with too much aggression and overconfidence. My humility was now restored and properly stamped to my forehead. Heli-skiing in the Rockies was a great experience, and it taught me a great life lesson that will make me a better person, entrepreneur, and skier. Let me apply the lessons to my other favorite passion, entrepreneurship. I want to bust the myth of the entrepreneur as a risk-taking, swashbuckling hero out for the big payday. A life lived well is a life lived to its fullest potential. That potential doesn't mean taking unwarranted risks or not living in the service of others. I believe there are 3 principles to live by that will make you a better entrepreneur. Number 1, be a risk mitigator, not a risk taker. Number 2, humility is a better trait than confidence every day of the week and twice on Fridays. Number 3, starting a business, as with everything else you do in life, should be about finding a higher purpose.
Yeah. All right, so this one is Sid Marty, and it's his reason why. It's called The Argument for Ascending. Side hill gouging gives my ankles pain. Stiff-kneed evenings and arthritic old age. Slab rock and ice have let so many down from an awkward stance. To their finger ends, the mystery of falling. Gravity too is my domain. It turns you, swimmer, over. I watch from the steep approaches. The skulls of goats, the skulls of sheep foot my precipitous fences. Learn to fail sometimes. Bear with me. Your body is the cross you carry to the high places, and your reward, a tearing wind, a view of endless higher summits. Sid Marty. Sid!
Way to go. Yeah.
All right.
Get out there.